Hey guys, Taki here. Today we're going to talk about an awesome update that recently dropped for the Razer Kishi 2. Now I haven't done a review on this controller and I'm not planning on doing one now or in the future, but I will just say that this is a really good controller with only a few things that I think could be better. I picked this up locally for about $120, which is kind of on the high end for a controller for Android like this, but there aren't many good telescope controllers on the market right now, and this one checked a lot of the boxes for me. This thing sells for about $100 in the US, and for that amount of money, you'd really be expecting an awesome controller with great components and probably some decent software to go with it. If we're just talking about hardware alone, like this is a really good controller with not a lot of competition on the market, but the software experience is pretty lackluster. The most important thing that this thing lacked was screen mapping technology, and that's important because there are a lot of controllers in the market that are cheaper than this that do come with screen mapping tech. Now, I don't really want to go in depth on this topic in this video, but not all of the controller software that's out there is above board that comes with these controllers. And even when it is, some controllers are much better than others when it comes to the software that they provide. There are also apps on the App Store that can give you access to screen mapping, but not all of them are above board, and some of them lock some premium features behind a paywall. That's kind of a heavy pill to swallow when your controller is already north of $100. Thankfully, Razer decided to port over some of their tech from the recent Razer Edge handheld that they've made, and that makes this a much better product than it was originally. In this video, we're going to go through the process of setting up this new software as well as testing it out, and I will give you my impressions of how it compares against some of the best software that's out there on Android handhelds and other Android controllers. So the first thing you're going to need to do is head over to the Google Play Store and download the Razer Nexus app. Once you do that, click open, and then you're going to have to accept these permissions that come up. The first permission that you're going to be asked to accept is the display over other apps, and this is something that's mandatory when you're going to be displaying the icons for the buttons on screen. Scroll down to Nexus and then select allow. So there are two big parts to this new app, and the first one is the new launcher that you get with this. Now, the phone that I'm using already has a decent launcher experience, but this is a nice option to go with if you're on a phone that doesn't have another option available. These apps were populated automatically, and if I go over into the installed apps section, I can put a favorites icon over the apps that I want to be displayed in that main bar that you just saw. So if we just say that I want all of my emulators to be visible there, I can go through and just put a heart icon over Aether SX2, Citra, Dolphin, DuckStation already has one, Skyline, and Yaba Sanshiro. Now when I go back, all of my emulators are inside this main bar list. Beyond this, if we go down, we can go to recommended games, and this is supposed to show you a list of apps that have native controller support, and then you can go ahead and install them if you want them. If we go down a little further, we have a list of streaming apps that we can use with this controller, and then we have a bunch of games that are broken down into their categories. But the thing that we're going to do is talk about the screen mapping tech. So we're going to start off by opening up the menu in the right-hand corner, and then we're going to go down to where it says Virtual Controller, and we are going to enable this. I also see that there's a new update available for this controller, so I'm going to go ahead and select Update before we move forward. With the controller software updated, the next thing that we need to do is go over to the apps that we want to enable virtual controller support for, and then we're going to press the Y button. Once we do that, we're going to launch the game, and we will have to enable another set of permissions. So if we look here, the most important permission is going to be the view and control screen. That's going to allow the app to read the entire screen, and that's a permission that you're not going to want to grant to an application that you can't trust. We also need to go in to the accessibility settings and enable a permission that's going to allow us to get a floating icon on our screen. And now as you can see, we have an icon here in the corner that we can move to wherever we want it to be. I don't know if you're going to run into this issue or if it's just an issue with the phone that I'm using right now, but I had to force kill the Nexus app to be able to get these screen mapping controls to show up. So like right now you can see this button right here is supposed to open up the screen mapping tech, but it's not doing anything. So we're going to have to go through that process right now. So on the app info for Nexus, the last time this happened, I had to do the force stop action here. And then after doing that, I was allowed to open up this application with the screen mapping showing up on screen. I have to turn the Nexus on again and then go back, and then the game should start. All right, so that's a bit annoying, but as long as it works, then I'm fine. Let's start off by mapping the controls by pressing this icon here on the left side. All right, we're gonna put our left joystick over here, and we're gonna put our right joystick over here, and then I'm gonna map some other buttons that I need just to be able to demonstrate this. This is a bit weird because usually on other screen mapping tech, you'd have to press the button and move it where you want, but this is you press it and it goes somewhere and then you have to move it. But whatever, it still works. Okay, we've got a couple of things mapped here, so now we can test out to see if it works. Let's close that menu, and before we click on the check mark, let's go over here into settings to see what we can change. So we can disable the overlay from showing up on screen, And we can also set the button opacity. I'm going to set this a bit lower. Now something else that I'm seeing right now, we have what looks to be a settings option for the right joystick, and I'm going to see if they have a change view mode for this. And they do. They have something called camera pan mode, and what that does is it will send inputs from the left side of your screen to the right side of your screen, or vice versa, and then it will just keep repeating until you stop using the joystick. We do want to enable that because we need it for this game. Okay, now we're ready to save all of our settings, and let's see how everything works. All right, so I'm seeing that the right and left joysticks are a bit wonky, so I'm going to try to fix their position right now. The other buttons seem just fine, so hopefully we can fix this by just changing where they are positioned. All right, so I've managed to fix some of the problems, but there's still some wonky aspects of this that we need to talk about. So the first thing you'll be able to notice is the left analog stick works perfectly fine, as do all of these other buttons that I've gone ahead and mapped. The right hold trigger is able to get input at any level of pressure, which is nice, and all of the other buttons work as they should. The one thing that's strange is the right analog for the change view, and I'll just show you what it looks like right now at the highest sensitivity. So if we just spin the camera around, you can see that it's not actually perfectly smooth. You'll see it's kind of stuttering a little bit. As you can see, it's kind of jerky, but it is completely playable. Like, you could use this for any game that's like this one where you need to change the camera around. It's just not as smooth as it probably could be. So like I said before, when you're doing this kind of input, something is going to be pressing on the screen and it's going to go from one side to the other. When it hits the other side, it will start again. And it seems like there's a bit of a delay between when it gets to the end and it starts over again. This is not a problem that I've seen on any other controller software, so it should be something that's really easy for Razer to come in here and modify in the next version of this software. If you saw my review on this Red Magic 8 phone, you'll know that it also has screen mapping tech, but the right analog for that is not meant for 3D games like the one that I'm playing right now. It's perfectly adequate for MOBA games, but it doesn't work well at all for something like this because it doesn't have a change view mode. So when we're looking at a phone like the one that I have here, like, this is my next best option since the built-in controller software isn't better than the one that I'm getting right here in this early software from Razer. I've gone ahead and turned on a developer option that will hopefully demonstrate what I'm talking about a bit better than I can with words. So as you can see right now, we have that circle over here for the right analog stick. And if I make a movement, you can see that there's an icon on that circle that moves around. Now, usually with the software that I've seen, this movement would happen across the entire screen in one movement like it would if you were just using this. It would be like this. So for some reason, they've just decided to keep it in that circle itself. And that's probably part of the reason why we're seeing this problem happen. And as you can see, if it gets to the edge there, it takes a while until it bounces back over to the right side. So this delay here is going to need to be improved for this to be a better experience. We can go ahead and change the circle to be a bit bigger, which does limit the amount of stuttering that we have, but it still happens. So they are going to need to fix this in a future version. Just before we close out the video, I did end up finding another bug that I want to talk about. There's a common problem that you'll see on older screen mapping tech in Android handhelds where if you touch the screen, you'd break the ability to do any inputs until you stopped pressing any buttons and pressed again, and that is a problem that this thing has. So if we see right now, I can move the joystick around with no issues, but if I touch the screen, the joystick will not function anymore until I let go and then press it again. This can be a huge issue depending on the games you're playing, and I hope that this is another issue that gets fixed in the next version of this software because that's going to be a deal breaker depending on what you're playing. As I already mentioned, I bought this thing a while ago, and I was never anticipating that it was going to get this kind of functionality, so this is a really cool update to see, and I think a lot of Razer Kishi owners are going to be happy when this gets improved more than it is right now. As it stands right now, this is one of the better controllers that are out there, and if you limit yourself to just this style of controller, this is easily the best one that exists right now. If you have any other questions, you can leave those down below, and I'll catch you here next time with another one. Happy gaming, everyone!